Listen, thank you so much for joining me today. We're on part 3 of the I am statements of Jesus, and we're going through just trying to get a real sense of who Jesus is. And there's really no better way to do that than look and see who Jesus is. And he says, I am. He says, I am these things. You know, we've gone through 3 of the I am statements of Jesus in the Gospel of John so far. There's 7 of them in total. And we've gone through, Jesus says, I am the door. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And Jesus says, I am the true vine. And so we've gone through those in the first couple parts. And now we're going to add to that today. Now it's interesting because Jesus is using the wording ego and me for I am. That's what's recorded in the Greek from what is being said. And it's just the reality that Jesus is using these words specifically because he wants to tie back to Exodus 3 verse 14, where God says to Moses, I am who I am. And whenever ego and me is used in the New Testament in that context with Jesus, he's reaching back to that. That could be said other ways, but he's making sure that we understand what is happening here. And Jesus is saying, listen, I am God. Make no mistake about it. This is who I am. And it just brings this clarity to all of these I am statements. I'm going to move today into John 6:35, and we find another I am statement there. And Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He repeats that statement in verse 41, 48, and 51, all in chapter 6. And so he's just bringing a lot of clarity to saying, listen, I am the bread of life. This is who I am. And it says in verse 35 here, it says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will not become hungry, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst ever. And the language here is really bulky. That's what's in the Greek. That's how it's written. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But it's there for emphasis. Now, what's happening here in John 6 is that Jesus has just gone ahead and fed the 5,000 men the day previous. And so this same crowd is looking for Jesus. Jesus brings clarity to that in verse 26 in this chapter and says, listen, you're coming after me because I gave you loaves of bread yesterday and you want loaves of bread today. And there's a reality that Jesus does meet our needs physically. He will bring those loaves of bread. There's no question about it. And he just proved that feeding 5,000. And he says, this is so much greater than this. He says, I am the bread of life. And all of a sudden it turns and from a natural to a supernatural to a spiritual heavenly event. And Jesus declares this in John 6:33, where it says, for the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And Jesus is starting to bring clarity to his audience, saying, listen, like, I am from God, and this is who I am, and this is what I bring. I am the bread of life. And so I will meet all of your needs. I'm the sustainer of everything that you need, spiritual, physical, emotional, relational, eternal, right now, and forever. And so he just starts to expand the crowd, saying, listen, like, you're after me for a few loaves of bread, but I'm going to tell you who I really am and what this is really about. And what an amazing journey for us to just allow Jesus to expand our vision of who he is. Because, I mean, imagine putting him in a box. Imagine thinking he's less than he actually is. And so, you know, the truth is, Jesus does meet all of our needs. The truth is, Jesus is our sustainer. The truth is, Jesus is the only one who can forever meet all of our needs. We read about him meeting all of our needs, our hunger and our thirst in Revelation 7, which goes forever. And that's what Jesus is looking ahead to. And he can do that now, and he can do that forever, just as what he's speaking about. And so we're starting to get this reality of who Jesus is. Now, let's get into this Greek language a bit. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will not, and then there's another word, not, become hungry. And whoever believes in me shall never, another word added, never, thirst ever. Okay, so Jesus is bringing clarity that, listen, like, you just need to know that I've got it. You need to know that when I say you'll never hunger, you'll never thirst, I actually mean that. Really meaning that he is our sustainer. He actually is going to meet absolutely all of our needs. And the Greek language is bulky here. We bring it into the English. We can't really say that easily, and so we kind of tear it down some, but it's all there. That's exactly what Jesus said and what was recorded for us to hear. And it just helps us understand the emphatic nature of what Jesus is saying about who he is and how he establishes his provision for you and me as his followers. Now, I want to go on to one more I am statement right now, and we read that in John 8:12. It says, again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Now, again, we've got this emphatic nature in the Greek and this language that he's adding these extra words just to make sure that they understand, that we understand what he's actually talking about, what he's speaking into. Now, it's amazing because Jesus would have been in the temple court, one of the outer temple courts, preaching this, and there would have been large candelabras all around him. And so he's saying, in this context, he's saying, I am the light of the world. And in the same sense, the Jewish audience that would have heard that, and actually including the Pharisees in that context, they would have known that God is the one who is light, because we know from Psalm 27 verse 1 says, the Lord is my light, among many other scriptures. And so when Jesus says, I'm the light of the world, he's saying, listen, I want you to know that I'm God. I want you to know what I bring. I want you to know what I'm about. And it's amazing for us to understand the reality that we can't understand these I am statements without understanding that Jesus is divine. Everything that he's saying about his nature, about what he brings, is I'm light of the world, I'm the bread of life. He's none of those things unless he's divine. But because he is divine, he is those things. And so that's what just kind of separates of Jesus, of course, from everyone else, is because he's God and he can actually back this up. He can actually do everything that he says. There's nothing that he says that he can't do because he can do it all. So this is just an amazing reality for us to be considering. You know, let's go back into this verse here. It says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And you know, it's interesting. It says the verb to follow means to join one as a disciple. And so he's speaking, he's saying, listen, I'm the light of the world. And if you follow me as a disciple, you will not walk in darkness, but you will have the light of life. And the light of life is just simply that. It's living in the abundance. It's living in the kingdom economy. It's living in what God has for us, in the kingdom life that Jesus has for us and has established for us. And that's what this kingdom life that he's talking about. And it happens as we become his disciples. This starts to flow through. Jesus says in Matthew 5:14, he says, you are the light of the world, but that light is only reflected light. So yes, we are the light of the world. That's absolutely true. But we're only light. We have nothing to give unless we submit our lives to Jesus and allow him to fill our lives with his light. And so there's no light. You and I can't come up with any light without following him. One more thing about light and darkness. It says in John 1:4-5, it says, in Jesus was life, and his light was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And we just got this amazing reality that as we follow Jesus, we cannot be overcome. It's incredible that it's so overwhelming to know, because we're following one who has never been overcome, who cannot be overcome. And listen, if we want to live in victory, we all have the opportunity as followers of Christ to live in victory, but we can only do it submitted to Jesus. Like, you and I can't come up with this victory. We can't live in light and freedom without Jesus. But in Jesus, we absolutely can. There's no question. There's nothing holding us back from living in the fullness that God has for us. And so what an amazing gift. What an amazing blessing. So listen, guys, those are the two that I'm going to consider at this time. And I just really appreciate your time. And honestly, just all these things are just open doors for us to really dig into and learn more of who Jesus is as we consider these I am statements. God bless, and we'll see you next time.